This is the Torg Eternity Delphi Council Debriefings, where the storm has a name. We are your hosts, Jay and Leamon, and today we will be talking about the last Vitality Path from the Pan-Pacifica sourcebook, which is the Path of Unification. But before we get into that, I do have an email. Which means, yes, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. We will reply to your email like we will reply to this one, which has a couple of questions. We'll answer your questions to the best of our ability. If you just want to send us comments, we'll read those and we'll comment on your comments, etc. So this is another email from T, who's written to us several times before. It says, "Hi guys, many thanks once again for what you're doing. I'm actually running unhallowed data at the moment, so the podcast is incredibly helpful. Couple of questions for you on disconnection. So I'm glad our unhallowed data deep
Yeah.
dive is uh, giving somebody out there some insights and help. That's why we do these. But these are about disconnection. So that's why I decided to go ahead and do this email here because it's not unhallowed data questions, but two questions. The first is the rules say a character attempt sorry. The rules say characters attempt to reconnect as a free action every round. Does this mean it comes off the same die as the rest of the round's actions, just with no multi-action penalty, or do they get a separate die roll? Um, so I do it at the beginning of each character's turn. They do a free action roll, generate their number because they'll want to know whether or not they're reconnected before they attempt something else in the round. And if they do reconnect, I don't want to say you're this round you don't get to do your cool reality contradiction based things because the reconnection would occur at the end of your turn as if it's part of a multi-action. So the established multi-action rule is you roll once but you determine the success or failure of all the actions, and then those effects of those successes or failures then get applied at the same time. That's why you can't do a multi-action of intimidate and do a melee weapon to give the person vulnerable and then use that vulnerable to gain the +2 to hit them. So is that how you do it, Jay, or do you do it a different
Yeah.
way?
I mean, it's worth noting it's not a multi-action, it's a free action. So again, with it not being a multi-action, there's no negative
Mm-hmm.
for having, depending on what you're doing. So there are a few things that do free actions like this where you're going to roll a separate die, and it's just irrespective of whatever you're going to roll during your turn. There's disconnection. There's like if you're grappled, trying to get out of restraint is another one, which is a free. Unless you fail, then it's not free, right? But if you succeed with a good success, then you can do stuff again. And then updraft is another one, which we're going to be probably getting to shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so there are a few things like that. It's a free roll at the beginning of the player turn. Anyone who is basically, well, actually, okay, yeah, for reconnection, I'm getting ahead of myself.
Mm-hmm.
For reconnection, it's as soon as it becomes the player's turn, everyone who is disconnected needs to make a roll for reconnection. It's a free roll. If they succeed or fail, it doesn't affect them with penalties or what they can. The only thing is whether they are able to use out of realm abilities or
Mm-hmm.
not. But you also, I believe, cannot opt not to do it because there is consequences for rolling a 1 on that.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a free action.
So then that I think takes care of question one. So then question number two: if a character disconnects due to a surge on the conflict line, do they immediately get a chance to reconnect? All the best, T. So this actually brought up some before we started recording some questions about when do these things happen, both officially and as house rules, as well as some of the uh, the consequences on when you place these surges happening or not happening. So both of us, even though we don't find it, we do remember there being a everything on the drama card, both good things and bad things that appear happen at the beginning of the round. So before either the heroes or villains take their turn, deal with those, and then go to either the hero's turn and the villain's turn. But then there are exceptions to that blanket rule, such as fatigue is supposed to happen at the end of your turn, um, things like that. But I do know myself, as well as other game masters, have different house rules for the thing. So the character disconnects due to a surge. Do they immediately get a chance to reconnect? So to answer that question, from what we just said previously, it's at the beginning. Your free action is at the beginning of your turn. So you would wait until your turn and then do a free action for your reconnection check, which is a reality skill test compared to a difficulty number based on if you're in a mixed zone, a dominant zone, or a pure zone. But when you make the original surge could really alter things. If you go by the official, which is it happens at the beginning of the round, and you disconnect, you roll that one or that 1 to 4, depending on your contradiction, if you're a 1 case or a 4 case walking contradiction, then you would disconnect. And if you're disconnected and it's at the beginning of the round and the villains go first, you are disconnected during all the villains' turn, which means you can't use possibilities to soak, as well as possibilities for other things, which is very harsh, very bad. I want to say the only non-martyr purpose using the martyr card player character deaths in my games have occurred when somebody has been disconnected and could not soak, could not spend the possibilities. Uh, for my house rule, and it's not as I want to give the players a better chance. For me, it is so that I don't forget stuff. I look when the villains go, I look at the villains and apply all of their stuff then, because I'm looking at the drama card at that time. And I look down, okay, villains go first. Villains are fatigued, or villains are stymied, or villains are set back. All of that happens immediately, and then I do all the villains, and then when I see the heroes, I go, oh, okay, the heroes surge, okay, the heroes fatigue, the heroes are stymied. All of that happens at the beginning. I found, even though it might make sense of what you did during your turn fatigues your heroes, um, I forget to look at the card again at the end, and who knows, half the time the either side doesn't get those applied because I haven't looked at the card again. I'm moving on. That's why I do it. How do you apply surges if not just at the beginning you turn the card and hey guys do that fun surge?
I mean, that's pretty much what I do. It's like as soon as the card is revealed and
Hmm.
we have confirmed that we are remaining with this card,
Right.
the surge has been revealed because that's the way it's worded in the Torg core book. When surge comes up on the conflict line of the drama card, and I realize there's wiggle room, but the way I do it, as soon as it's revealed and this is what it's going to be, everyone has to roll for surge. But yes, they do get a reconnection test on the beginning of their turn. So if the heroes go first, they do get an immediate chance to
Right.
reconnect, which, depending on where you are, that's good. But, if you're in a pure zone somewhere, it might not even really help you that much.
Right.
Who knows?
Or if you're
Um,
in, if you just happen to disconnect because you were carrying that God meter in Core Earth, but you're from Core Earth, and you have used either don't have Realm Runner or have already
yeah.
used it, and it's not your big thing. Then who really care, except for the soak. The
Yeah.
soak is
So it's
the
one
big
of those
thing.
things like, yeah, in that case you do get an immediate reconnection, but if the villains go first, that is where the big issue is is
Mhm.
they might get to tee off on you with no recourse.
Right. And how my players have have done this is the last game I had, the surge came up, my Pan-Pacifica Electric Samurai disconnected, and when I was just going, I had, everybody roll your surge roll, and I'm going, okay, what did you roll? Okay, what, you're fine. What did you roll? Okay, two, but you're not a two case contradiction. Blah blah blah. Was moving around and got to her to finally, how's your electric samurai? And she just hands me the reconnect card. There's just like, boom, just doing it there because of the previous
Yeah.
session she had reconnected and was having, or she had disconnected and was having a horrible time getting that reconnect to to get her back to Pan Pacifica. So that's what I found. A lot of my higher tech type people in lower tech
Right.
realms, they have that happen to them once, and after that, they are holding on to those reconnection cards or getting others to trade with them or whatever, however they can do it to get that card in their hands so they can be safe. So hopefully, T, that explained things about reconnections and disconnections and surges. But we will now be going to the path of unification. Vitality path. So I have a few tabs up here. But now we are on Pan Pacifica Path of Unification. So this is an interesting path because it kind of combines
Hmm.
some unarmed combat and psychic abilities. So
Hmm.
the prereq is at least 2 adds in kinesis and 1 add in unarmed combat, and you need to be a disciplined psychic. So you have to have bought some perks to get into this. You have to have a couple of skills at or one skill at 2 adds and one skill at 1 add, and the path skill is kinesis. So again, to say the same thing we've said every episode, but just in case you haven't listened to those, the path skill, whatever is the skill, you look at the adds, and that number of adds you have is how high you can go within the skill. So if you have a +2 adds, you get the first technique and the second technique, 1 and 2. You can't get the third technique until you get 3 adds in it, and then you get the third technique, and so on. To get higher than 5, you will need to have mastery in your path skill. Otherwise, you kind of hit a brick wall and can't go higher. So, having explained that, the first technique, which you will get 1 and 2 because you need to have 2 adds in kinesis, so you will have 1 and 2. 1 is painful touch. After dealing damage with an unarmed attack, spend 1 shock to inflict 1 shock on all targets who took damage. So this means that if you are multi targeting, you spend 1 shock and everybody gets that additional shock. So, what are your thoughts on painful touch?
It's okay. It's I mean it's just the level 1 skill, so it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to be that big, but I mean there's a reason painful is a function that you can put on weapons, and technically this also stacks with painful.
Mm-hmm.
So if you are using a painful weapon, you could be doing 2 extra shock.
Sure.
If you're using dazing weapons, that extra of course this is with unarmed attacks, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure someone could make dazing brass knucks.
Yep, that's
But
exactly what I was
so
thinking.
but basically, yeah, so not dazing, but painful is a property, so it is worth having 1 shock. And 1 shock for 1 shock against just one guy is not really the best trade-off unless you have a way to refresh and you're just shocking out this character. But against an entire mob, using the mob clearing rules, if you hit 4 guys, that's 4 shock. Um, Instead of keeping track of each individual enemies shock, many game masters will pool it, and once, like if they have a shock of 7, once
Hmm.
7 shock has just been done in general, then that's enough just to get rid of one token, like one creature. Just makes the bookkeeping easier. So a lot of game masters do that. And in that case, the extra 1 shock to each target is actually pretty useful.
Right. I think the only way that I would spend this on one target is if I knew that it was going to knock him out. That
Yeah.
I didn't, I did one or two shock, and they were at 6,
If I knew someone was
and
casting Soothe next
that's
action, you know.
right. So that's the reason. But amongst I would say, like you said, the more targets, the more this is beneficial, especially if the game master is using the mob rules where they collect all the shock and then take one individual out of the mob. So let's move on to 2. Avoid and deflect. When attacked before the roll is made, a hero may spend 1 shock to gain a bonus equal to half his kinesis adds, rounded down to his unarmed defense for that attack. So basically, it is a way to boost your defense using your kinesis for a shock. So, but you have to do it before the roll is made. So, what are your thoughts on avoid and deflect?
This is okay. It is definitely one that scales very well. At the beginning, if you only have like 2 ads in Kinesis, +1 is no, not really a big deal. But by the end of this, if you're going all the way with this
Mm-hmm.
tree, getting a +4 is really good.
Yes.
And even though going full defense, like active defense, is kind of like a sucker's game some of the time, this can be combined with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to add like +2 to 4 to your already enhanced defenses is pretty good. At worst, you're trading in one extra shock, right? So usually you're probably trading 1 shock instead of you're taking 1 shock instead of 2.
Mm-hmm.
And worst case scenario, you're taking 3, right? But it is only to unarmed defense, though, so that's going to be against melee and unarmed. Doesn't really help you against shooting or anything. But then again, there's other ways to help yourself with kinesis there, and you're probably somewhat planning for it.
Right. So yeah, I think as you said, this one scales with time and experience as you start progressing within the path of unification. It's only going to get better. At the beginning, you will have it at least as a +1 because
Mhm.
you need it at +2 to even get it. Um, so you'll get that +1 to your unarmed defense. So it's something. It's a shock. Not great to begin with, but can be pretty useful down the line. So 3 is interesting. It's just biokinesis. Gain 2 kinesis psionic powers. So you buy your 1 adding kinesis, and you gain 2 kinesis powers. So what are your thoughts on that?
To be honest, this is the reason why some people just take Path of Unification. It is the only way to get more powers after taking Disciplined Mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's Disciplined Mind. Whatever one of the psychic tree. There's the wild mutant, and then there's the
Disciplined.
disciplined psychic, I think it is.
Yeah, that's
So
what
you
it
need to
says. You
take
need to have
Path.
disciplined psychic.
Yeah, disciplined psychic. So you need to have disciplined psychic, and then from there to get more powers, you have to take Path of Unification. And I know some people have kind of said that it makes the kinesis a bit limited because you can only get 2. And I think you get more later. I can't remember.
You get
Uh,
specific ones.
Specific ones, yeah. So you do have to kind of plan it a bit, but it's not that it's good or bad, it's that it's kind of the core of it and you kind of need it.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what you're going to do to get those powers.
Right. So the next one, Iron Fist. This was a specific. You gain the telekinetic strike power for free. If the hero already has this power, So say that you got to 3 and you bought or you used it to gain telekinetic strike and then you get Iron Fist. If you already have it, then you spend 2 shock and gain a +4 bonus to the kinesis test to manifest it. So we probably then want to go to the telekinetic strike to read that so people will see what that is. So telekinetic strike is a axiom 22, kinesis 10, one action. The DN is just a standard 10, range self, 3 rounds. We get past the fluff. When successfully activated, the psi gets a +2 bonus to all damage for an unarmed combat. Telekinetic strike cannot be used to enhance weapons, but does work with natural weapons like bites or claws. And this is where we get to the whole what are brass knuckles and what authors forgot what rules and what is all strikes but natural weapons, blah, blah, blah. That is Game Master. That is Game Master approval, Game Master prerogative to determine when all of those things stack within the current Torg Eternity rules. But it says this is bonus to damage, not strength. So if the character's strength was increased by energize or another source, both would apply to increasing the overall damage. A good gives you a +3, and an outstanding gives you a +4. So that is the power, and then going back up to the path of unification, what it would be, you get a +4 bonus to manifest it. So basically, your difficulty number would be a 6 instead of it being a 10 for all intents and purposes, unless my math is really off. So, what are your thoughts on either and both the telekinetic strike power as well as Iron Fist technique?
Well, telekinetic strike is no slouch. If you're already just going to be punchy punchy, +4 is pretty sweet. Worth mentioning that the +4 makes it more likely that you're going to get that good or outstanding. Or another way of looking at it is it's making it easier so that you can multi-action and do other stuff as
Right.
well. Sadly, you can't attack and get the telekinetic strike ability at the same rule as was discussed earlier
Mm-hmm.
about multi-actions versus free actions. So that first one, you're not going to have it, but you could still attack, or you could be doing some interaction attacks or running around, who knows, right? But the +4 is really just to help you get that done, no prop kind of a thing. So, it's pretty good. And I would imagine telekinetic strike is kind of core to what this concept of a path is. So you probably have it.
Right.
The only thing with telekinetic strike is it only lasts for 3 rounds, which is a little problematic, but overall it's still good.
And a lot of combats can take place within 3 rounds, or
It's
you're
true.
doing it,
Yeah.
or you're refreshing it once. You're
Yeah.
casting it again or manifesting it again once. I found 6 rounds to be kind of the stretching point of how long combats tend to last. Um, so yeah, let's move on to 5, Iron Skin. So Iron Skin would be the last one that you could buy normally without the mastery for Kinesis. But Iron Skin is when taking damage from an attack, spend 2 shock to gain a +4 armor bonus against that attack. Um, it doesn't really specify when, but it does say when taking damage. So I would say I would I as a game master would allow this after the damage has been determined, because you might not know exactly if you're taking damage depending on what your armor is previous to that. But spend 2 shock, gain 4 armor bonus. It's not a toughness bonus, so if it's an armor piercing attack, there's going to be however much that armor piercing is going to subtract from it. So if somebody is says from an attack. So if somebody's casting a lightning bolt, and whichever one is the AP4 version,
You
uh,
don't do it.
you're just going to take more damage doing it. But if it's any other thing, even an AP2, you're going to get a +2 for 2 shock. So what are your thoughts on Iron Skin?
as far as I'm aware, like it's an armor bonus, so it wouldn't stack with any other armor you have already,
Right.
right? So if you're wearing kind of a like security armor, which gives +4 armor,
Hmm.
it's kind of pointless. But the idea is that you're, a monk, you've got no armor on probably. So in that case, it could be helpful. +4 is pretty significant armor.
Hmm.
It's like the core earth and the kind of sort of standard for like big
They're big,
combatants.
right?
Yeah, so it could definitely help. The question is the two shock worth it?
Hmm.
And so that's why I would definitely lean towards what you said, like it's after you know how much damage you're going to be taking.
Right.
So if you can judge that, okay, it's worth me taking this two shock to not take a wound or two
Hmm.
wounds, in that case, it's worth it.
Yeah, is 4
Um,
shock worth not taking a wound and 2 shock or whatever?
yeah, yeah.
um, so yeah, I think this is a pretty solid. I wouldn't say it's overpowered, but it's a very solid technique. Now we'll get to 6 wire fu. This and 7 as well as 8 would be needed to get the mastery of kinesis. But wire fu is you gain the updraft power for free. If the hero already has this power, you spend 1 shock to manifest the power at the standard success level without making a test. So we'll get to updraft in a moment, but basically, if you had used your biokinesis earlier to get the telekinetic strike and updraft because you wanted to kind of enhance these two things, updraft, if you just were okay with the standard success, you could just spend a shock and not roll. And then you might not be making a disconnection test or anything else that goes along with it, a failure, possible backlash. So it's just 1 shock to make sure I get that standard success. So let's move down to updraft. So updraft is Axiom 23, skill of a 12. It's a simple action. A
Yeah, it's
DN of a standard of 10. Self 1 round. The hero creates a gust of air that lifts her straight up at walking speed. What that means is whatever your dexterity is in meters, that's how high you could go. Next round, you drift back down at walking speed along any path. So basically, you would descend, and it allows you to basically go straight up and then kind of over in any direction. Good is you can move in the air without descending for 2 rounds, and 3 is you can do it for 3 rounds. So, what are your thoughts on updraft and or the or looking for an and the wire foo.
So updraft was a weird ability. I think it was introduced in a Nile Empire backer archetype, the dervish. So it was a core earth
Mm-hmm.
character, which is why it's Axiom 23, and caused all manner, not controversy, but like when do we roll the yeah, because
Right.
it's a simple action. So it's not a free action,
Mm-hmm.
it's a simple action. So it does take one of your simple actions. But the same idea, it does require a roll, but it's not part of a multi-action.
Mm-hmm.
So it's irrespective of the other rules you're doing, is the way I've been doing
Right.
it anyways. That said, like updraft is pretty decent. Like being able to go up, uh, levitation is always powerful. That said, the wire foo spend a shock to do it standard for automatically is insane. It's so good. And then you could just spend that shock again next turn and go up again, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, so you don't have to necessarily come down. Normally, you would have to roll and get a good or outstanding. But yeah, just being able to keep spending shock, and it's only 1 shock for
Right.
each, so you could just keep going, or even alternating it like every other turn, but just being able to get above everything on the battlefield. Because going up 10 to 13 meters is fairly significant,
Right.
right? You can get quite the vantage point there. And a lot of adventures are not written with the assumption that player characters can fly. Like when I had a character who was a pixie or a character with one of those broomsticks,
Hmm.
they were able to do all kinds of crazy things. And this is obviously not as involved, like as free as that, but you can get into a lot of cool spots and to places where other enemies can't hit you, things like that. So yeah, this one is really good. It's definitely not a direct combat ability, but creative player can really find ways to use this.
Yeah, and it could be a get me out of combat.
Yeah.
You know, I'm about to wound out. I still have enough shock to do this a few times to get
Mhm.
me up and over, um, or a vantage point. I'm also thinking you said a levitate. It doesn't even those things don't even have to be a pure fly. Like even the
Yeah.
aspirant gliding wings that they start with, that they have to start high, but then they at least descend and make a lengthwise thing. In one of my games recently, the aspirant climbed a big tree and used it to glide to the other side of a big large area of water, a lake basically, so that he could get a boat and row the boat back to get everybody else, because otherwise they were going to have to either create a raft, cobble together a raft, send somebody over to swim or something like that. So any time where you are able to go up and over is advantageous, and it's a nice utility as well as a get out of dodge type power.
Yeah.
Um, so we will move to number 7, non-lethal strike. When inflicting damage from an unarmed combat attack rather than inflicting wounds, you spend 1 shock to inflict 3 shock per wounds on all targets struck. So if you're basically you can't multi-target and say I'm gonna do normal damage on this guy and shocking out damage on this other guy. You do all or nothing. So if you use this, you spend 1 shock, but any wounds you do will be converted to 3 shock per wound. So, what are your thoughts on non-lethal strike?
So this is what I was talking about earlier with painful strike or painful touch
Right.
about adding
Dazing.
it to dazing. So this is dazing. And the thing about dazing is like a lot of people got, I guess, almost poo-pooed dazing a bit because of the electric samurai, electric
There's
katana
katana.
getting it
Mm-hmm.
and not doing it. So becoming like almost entirely useless against undead or robots or things that don't take shock. But the flip side of this is against things that do take shock, dazing is insane.
Yes.
And this was not changed like dazing was,
Mm-hmm.
because dazing was eventually changed that the first wound is converted into 3 shock and everything else is still a wound.
Right.
This is still every wound is converted into 3 shock. So if you do 2 wounds to something, you're really doing 10 shock,
Right. Because
right?
you keep the
Three,
shock that you've
three,
already.
and then two, two. Or yeah. And you spend another shock yourself and make it painful, you're doing 11
Right.
shock. So that is often enough to shock out almost anything. Um, they don't mention it here, but um, I would put it at the same timing as dazing because
Mm-hmm.
normally in dazing they roll to soak, and then once that's failed or succeeded or whatever, then the wounds are converted
Mm-hmm.
into shock, so that a standard doesn't get everything. But so keep that in mind too. It's already gone through
Right.
when you decide to use this. Because it's when inflicting the damage.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so it's very good. Obviously useless against like most undead and certain things, and maybe some dinosaurs that have a ridiculous amount of shock. But against most things, if you don't need to kill them, this will get rid of them like almost in one shot a lot of the time. And if it's just doing shock, well, no, it's after the soaks. That's actually irrelevant. But yeah, yeah. Also, an easy way to get people for interrogation and not worrying about accidentally killing everybody. If you have any perks that make you, say, randomly hit people, and this can also be used then too. So it's got a lot of upside, and it's definitely a good high level. Because like, if I could make dazing brass knucks like in a second, I would do that. But sadly, they don't exist.
So, yes, I completely agree. There is always a time in every uh, gaming campaign or adventure or whatever, and even classic Torg, where the players realize that you don't need to always just wound out an enemy to defeat them. That at some point, every little bit of shock damage is going to have a possibility spent to soak because they can't afford anything. They might be completely unwounded, not have any wounds whatsoever, but have enough shock that they can't handle any amount of shock. And if you do that like once and the guy's still standing, then he will be soaking everything afterwards just so that the next hit doesn't put him down. There have been multiple times in recent games where I've had powerful high toughness threats go up against Storm Knights and they've ended up shocking them out. And I think the last adventure I ran just last Friday, so we're talking 6 days ago. They encountered six Triceratops, and they wounded one of them. Gave one of them one wound, and did enough shock to the other ones to make them go away through both spells, psionic powers, as well as some hits with some melee weapons in there. I've seen so many big, horrible creatures in Torg Eternity get shocked out because we couldn't wound them. So anything that can do this, yes, it's not going to work against your Gospog or anything that's unliving has relentless, any of those. But for the things that do, this is just superb. It's a very, very, very powerful uh, technique. So we will move on to unification, which is the last. So you need to have gotten your kinesis up to an 8 adds. Ignore 2 points of multi-action penalties when the action involves kinesis and unarmed combat. If the hero hits with an unarmed attack and succeeds at manifesting a psionic power, spend 2 shock to increase the damage of the unarmed attack by +4, or apply the damage to one target twice. So, as I believe it's in the FAQ, because this is one thing that kind of changed a bit, you can only do one damaging attack basically per round. So you can't shoot twice or shoot and stab normally. And what this would do is you could either do an unarmed attack and get a +4 to the damage, or if you had a kinesis power that did damage, you could do an unarmed attack, do damage, and then your kinesis attack do damage as well. So, what are your thoughts on unification?
The first half of this is like meh. Okay, so I lose -2 multi-action penalty. But then the second half is like +4 damage, ignoring the being able to hit with two different things, which
Mm-hmm.
is already big. But even just +4 damage on your regular hit is also very good. And it's worth noting if you want to be a little sneaky about it, you can always just use the one shock updraft wire foo to
Mm-hmm.
get a standard success
Yes,
on an updraft for your successful kinesis ability. And then you really just need to succeed
the attack.
on the attack. If you if the GM agrees, because the implication here is that it's all part of a multi-action, and updraft isn't part of a multi-action, it's a
Hmm.
simple action. But it depends on what your GM would say. I would probably let it go unless it was becoming an obvious shtick, that was being exploited too much. But either way, depending on how much shock you want to spend, that's also a good way to be getting the Iron Fist, because that already is assuming that
Hmm.
you're doing both at the same time, and getting the +4 bonus to the Kinesis test will help that as well. So there's a lot of little things that can be combined in here, but they are fairly shock heavy.
Right.
But as we've discussed in numerous paths previously, most people that make paths have some kind of shock regaining system,
Hmm.
whether it be the thing I can't remember the name of right now, the perk, or the gene mod, or just hoarding those second wind cards.
Right.
You know,
Or
they
making
they
sure you
usually
have
have a
a
plan.
soother in the party.
Yeah, yeah. It's usually part of the plan. And at this point, when you've got +8 ads in Kinesis, it's probably been set up.
Hmm.
So
Yeah, no, I think this is pretty good, and it is versatile, which is nice. As you stated, the ignore 2 points of multi-action allows that kinesis and unarmed combat tests not to have that basically that multi-action to uh, hamper it. But I would say that the updraft would also work because it just says um,
yeah, and then
if
like
it,
after you
if
made the
it, it
attack, you're gone. So
right, it's saying when the action involves kinesis and unarmed combat, if they hit with unarmed attack and succeed at manifesting a psionic power,
mm,
well, that was a psionic power,
yeah. So
then
it depends on your GM.
right. So yeah, you can hit really hard. A previous round you can get that telekinetic strike off. This round you advance, you smack a guy, and then leave. You go straight
Now
up.
the question is, do you where is it? Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Never mind.
Yeah.
Or actually no, I guess telekinetic strike is how is it worded? Is
Well,
it
let's
a
look at that.
bonus or is it a does telekinetic strike, yeah, increases your damage. So would the +4
Ah, with the
from this
bonuses.
stack with that?
It says it gets a +2 bonus to all damage.
Yeah.
So it just says
And then this says to increase
increase
damage of the unarmed attack by +4.
+4. So stack upon stacking. Like I said,
Yeah,
this is
so that
one
might
that
also be
yeah,
so that might also be a reason to all do the other
other
thing
thing.
where you apply both damages instead if it doesn't stack, because otherwise a potential +8 is kind of insane.
Yes, yes. So again, I am leaving all damage stacking into each individual game master because when certain things were brought out at the when this was finally published, what about this? What about this? Oh, this says only natural, but this says all. This says all, but then there's a little fluff that talks about natural. What's going on was giving me a headache. So I just figured let every game master determine what they wish to stack and what they wish to not stack on their own because you do want some stacking because otherwise unarmed combat won't get as high as a sword, and you want those characters to be able to feel as useful as a person with a sword or a hammer or some big stick or something like that. But you don't necessarily want them to be just completely, you got a guy with a stick and a guy with a fist. And they're both applying to be the greatest melee person of all. You want them to have an equal chance at that and not an incorrect choice. I do not
Mhm.
like incorrect choices. I like uh, viable options. If you give me 9 options and only one of them is the correct option, I see it as one option, not 9 options. So yeah, that's just my little sidetrack rant on why I'm allowing game masters. Or I mean, I allow game master. You can do whatever you want in your game, but how even officially, my official answer for this is game master discretion, game master's call. Because only the game master knows what is going to be working and not working in their own game. Having said that, and I have mentioned this previous multiple times, year two, we are being a lot more clear cut on what stacks and what doesn't stack. So nothing is ever in this gray area that will give game masters headache. So it'll be yes it does because of this, or no it doesn't because of this, and there shouldn't be any confusing the two. So that is a I'll let you, Jay. Has that been the case where there's not much confusion on what stacks and what doesn't stack with the new year two stuff?
Well, I mean, and aside from things changing week to week, yeah,
Right,
not
right.
really.
But that one's been around for quite a long time.
Yeah, yeah. No, that
Uh,
is probably one of the best changes, I would say.
mhm. So that is the end of the path of unification. So we'll go ahead and wrap this one up. Next time we'll be back in unhallowed data. Again, you can email us at torgdcd@gmail.com. Like T did, give us your questions, give us your comments. We will reply. We thank you for listening and or watching these episodes. I believe this one should be about 125 or 26. I'd have to look at what the numbering is. So we've been going quite a long time. I was looking up, and that was a thing that I wrote down. As an example, for Path of Unification, if you wish to reskin paths, you can go all the way back to episode number 35, where I do a kind of a reskinning of the Path of Unification that I did with one of the backers on a backer archetype. That was not published because of certain things, but I felt that the path that they came up with and I helped them with was viable. Um, so you can go back to episode 35 and look at that. It had a different, I think it was telepathy maybe. We're almost 100 episodes past that, so my memory is forgotten. But I think it was melee instead of unarmed, melee weapons instead of unarmed, combat, and telepathy instead of kinesis. But it could show you as a game master how to take these paths as inspiration and change them. I know even going all the way back to classic Torg, one of my players really loved the different martial art paths that were back then. He liked, I think he got all of one, all of another one, and then I allowed him to start making a third one on his own by picking and choosing the different techniques. I know that this can be very fun, and as we said at the very beginning, these paths kind of direct where your character is going, which can be a good thing if there's like too many choices. I just want to know something to focus on. I think all of these paths are nice, viable, flavorful, and can help you uh, create, not just create, but take a character along their journey within Torg Eternity. So, any last comments or anything, Jay, before we wrap up?
I do like paths. I also like them being unique. I'm glad not every like Cosm has them
Mm-hmm.
or like a version of them. So I know some people think that they're kind of overpowered in comparison. Like for one perk, you get all this stuff, but you do have to then also sometimes take more perks
Right.
to get the most use out of it. Some people think the paths are underpowered for some reason. So the fact that there's no great consensus probably shows that they're in a good spot for the most part.
Right. That's always a good test when you have people both saying they're the best and people saying that they're the worst. That then is opinion, and everybody's opinion is valid for that person. but that means as a general rule, it's viable to a lot. So having said that, we'll go ahead and wrap up. Thank you again for watching. That's a new word. Watching and or listening. So until next time, we hope you have fun in your own cosmos. Bye.